want to focus on two things, Minister, and it goes without saying, and at every opportunity, that I commend the work that's been done by the Department, by Irish Aid and by all our embassies and consular staff across the world, because Irish Aid, I see it, if we specifically stay at this one element, is a pillar of Ireland's foreign policy. But with that then, the credibility of commitments that we make, particularly towards overseas development aid, are actually crucially important, because they're public commitments that are made. So it's the government's responsibility and the Oireachtas' responsibility to follow through on those commitments. And I specifically want to reference the commitment of 0.7% of GNP, or GNI as you refer. You've referred to us that the Taoiseach has recently reiterated a commitment to reach the UN target of 0.7% of gross national income by 2030. And I know 2030 was mentioned last year by your predecessor, Joe McHugh, and then it kind of moved off the stage again. It wasn't mentioned again for a while. Just to put it in context, though, it's important that those commitments are given, but then we've got to see movement towards it. And we've discussed this cross-party at committee here. And my own belief, and my own party's belief as spokesperson in this area, is it's got to be done cross-party and on a multi-annual basis. We won't achieve it, in my view, and there's no point in saying 0.7% if we keep just dealing with it on an annual basis. And when you look at the challenge that faces Ireland, if this year we'd €707 million allocated, and that's 0.3%. Now, if I want to get up to 0.4% by 2022, and this is allowing for recognised growth rates, okay, that we're looking at an increase of about 400 million, okay, up to 1.1 billion. So, but if I want to get to 0.7% by 2030, that means that Ireland will be paying 2.459 billion, right? I want us to get to 0.7%, but that's the reality of it. And unless in annual budgets that be it your government or whoever's in government next actually makes that big initial leap, because that's what they had to do in Britain, is they had to actually jump by, and we would have to really jump significantly by about 200 million euro by 2020, annualised, to actually start to get up to 0.35 and to move from there to 0.4. And these are questions that I put to both yourself and to Minister Coveney very recently. It was actually yourself answered it, Minister Cannon. So we know we know how we can attain it, but I would ask you from this and the review of Irish Aid, because you will have a partner within my own party, is that we've got to actually start looking at this piece on a multi-annual basis. Let's plan the next 3 years, and let each of the parties and independents, be it the Budget Oversight Committee, which I think is the way forward, because you'd be submitting your plans, that Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin and Fine Gael and independents would actually say, well, here's the pot of money that we have, but whether we're going to commit an extra 200 million. Because we've got to do that, or else there's no point in us, and I don't mean it in a disrespectful way, there is absolutely no point in whatever Taoiseach of the country keep continuing to say we're going to hit 0.7 and we want to do it unless we actually see real movement towards it. So I would ask you, by way of the review of Irish Aid that's happening, is to make a policy decision that Irish Aid funding is done on a 3-year cycle initially, that we would do, that we would go from now up to 2020 and say, right, our target is to get to 0.35 by 2020. Here's how we do it. This is the money that's needed. Okay, then we want to get to 0.4 by 2022. Here's how we do it. You get my point. But I really think we've got to do it, or else there's no point talking about it. And the work that's being done is not undermined. Don't get me wrong. It's not undermined. But when we look at things like in seeking a seat on the UN Security Council, for argument's sake, the credibility of our international commitments is really important when we're going to look for. I don't have to tell you. You're doing it. All right. So. We've got to see that through. My final point relates to the definition of overseas development aid and maybe the change in what that is. And I don't like to. I think we should keep it pure as it is right now, but including expenditure for in-country refugee costs and peacekeeping, various things. The Vice Chairperson, Maureen O'Sullivan, I completely agree with what she's saying about the oversight and the issues that there are for oversight in multilateral aid programmes, there's a need for them, but I don't think we have enough. I certainly don't, as a TD or a spokesperson. I don't think we have it here, that we can't actually, and you referenced the EU-Turkey arrangement that we contribute into. I couldn't get a commitment or clarity on that none of the monies that we were putting into that programme were being used for security purposes, and that they weren't being used just purely for refugee and aid assistance, as opposed to security barriers and things like that. But you get my point. But definition, I think we need to define it. We need to stop moving away that if there is an emergency, that the money is being taken out of the ODA pot, and is actually saying, well, here's 30 million for a catastrophe somewhere else in the world. We should, if we're going to get to our point 7, let's deal with it as a programme. We have the best, in my view, of programmes running out there, the best of people doing it. But if it is a cornerstone of our foreign policy, which I believe it is, we've got to start moving towards it.